The night before everything ended, my son asked me if monsters were real. He was sitting cross-legged on his bed, the Spider-Man comforter pulled up to his waist, his nightlight casting a warm orange glow across the ceiling. Owen was 7. 7 years old, with dark curls that fell into his eyes and a gap where his left canine used to be. He'd been watching something at school. Some older kid showed him a clip on a phone during recess, and now he couldn't sleep. "Dad," he said, his voice small and careful, "are monsters real?" I sat on the edge of his bed and put my hand on his knee. I gave him the answer every father gives. The answer I believed with complete certainty. "No, buddy, monsters aren't real." He studied my face the way children do when they're deciding whether to trust you. Then he nodded, slid down under the covers, and closed his eyes. I kissed his forehead. I turned off the lamp. I walked downstairs and poured myself a glass of bourbon and watched the late news without really watching it. That was a Tuesday in October. By Thursday, I understood that I had lied to my son. My name is Marcus Bellamy. I was 38 years old, a structural engineer working for a mid-size firm in Columbus, Ohio. My wife, Erin, was a pediatric nurse at Nationwide Children's Hospital. We lived in a split level in Westerville with a fenced backyard and a golden retriever named Captain. We were ordinary. Ordinary in the way that protects you from imagining catastrophe. The first reports came Wednesday morning. I was in the office reviewing load calculations for a parking structure on campus when Dina from accounts walked past my door and said, "You seeing this?" She had her phone out. I glanced at the screen. Shaky footage from somewhere in Pennsylvania, a highway, people running between cars. I thought it was a protest, maybe a chemical spill. "Looks crazy," I said, then went back to my numbers. By Wednesday afternoon, Erin texted me from the hospital. "Something weird happening. 3 patients admitted from transport vans. They're not talking. Vitals are wrong. Nobody's telling us anything." I texted back, "Wrong how?" She didn't respond for 2 hours. When she did, it was just, "Come get Owen from school. I might be late." I left work at 3. The roads were normal. The sky was gray and flat and unremarkable. I picked Owen up from Emerson Elementary, and he told me about a science project involving vinegar volcanoes. We drove home. I made him chicken nuggets and applesauce. He played with Captain in the backyard while I stood at the kitchen window, scrolling through news feeds that were becoming increasingly incoherent. Violent incidents reported in multiple states. That was the language. Violent incidents. As if the words themselves could contain what was coming. Erin got home at 9:15. She came through the garage door and stood in the kitchen without taking off her coat. Her face was gray, not tired, gray, drained of something fundamental. "What happened?" I asked. She looked at me and I could see her choosing her words. "One of the patients bit a nurse." "Bit?" Tore her arm open, took a piece out of her forearm. 3 orderlies couldn't hold him down. He was... She stopped, swallowed. "He was wrong, Marcus. His eyes were wrong. The way he moved. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't psychosis. I've seen both. This was different." I poured her a glass of water. She drank it without sitting down. "They locked down the floor," she continued. "Then they locked down the building. Then someone from the health department showed up and told us all to go home and not discuss what we'd seen." She set the glass on the counter. "I don't think they know what it is." Upstairs, Owen slept in his Spider-Man bed. Captain lay on the rug beside him. The nightlight glowed orange. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room with my laptop open, watching the world begin to unravel, one headline at a time. And I kept thinking about that question, that small, trusting voice. Are monsters real? Thursday morning broke with sirens, not the distant, passing kind. These were layered, overlapping, coming from multiple directions at once. I stood at the bedroom window at 6 a.m. and counted 4 different emergency vehicles racing down State Route 3 in the span of 2 minutes. Erin was already awake, sitting up in bed with her phone pressed to her ear, listening to a voicemail from the hospital. "They're canceling all non-emergency shifts," she said, her voice flat. "Indefinitely." Owen appeared in our doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Why are there so many sirens?" "There's a situation, buddy," I said. "Some people are sick. The doctors and police are helping." He accepted this the way children accept weather, as something outside his control that adults would manage. He went downstairs to watch cartoons. I heard the familiar jingle of his morning show filter up through the floor, and for a few minutes, everything felt almost normal. Then I opened my laptop. The footage from overnight was different from the day before. It wasn't shaky phone clips anymore. It was news helicopters, aerial shots of intersections in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, in Cincinnati, less than 100 miles from us, where clusters of people moved in ways that didn't align with anything rational. They ran at others. They swarmed. When the cameras zoomed in, you could see the wrongness Erin had described. Postures that were hunched, aggressive, stripped of hesitation. The news anchors were still using cautious language. Affected individuals, persons experiencing acute behavioral episodes. No one was saying what it was. No one wanted to be the first to use the word that everyone was already thinking. My phone buzzed. It was my brother, Kevin, calling from Dayton. "You watching this?" he said. "Yeah. What do you think?" "I think we need to pay attention." Kevin was 42, divorced, no kids, former Army. He'd done 2 tours in Iraq and came back quieter than he'd left. We weren't close in the way some brothers are. We didn't call every week. But there was a solidity between us, a mutual understanding that when things got serious, we'd find each other. "If it gets to Columbus," he said, "I'm coming to you. Erin and Owen there?" "Both here." "Good. Stay inside. Fill your bathtubs. I'm not joking." I thought he was overreacting. I said I'd keep him updated and hung up. By noon, the schools announced closure. By 2 p.m., the governor issued a shelter-in-place advisory for Franklin County. By 4, we watched a live press conference where a man from the CDC stood behind a podium and said the words, "infectious neurological agent," without elaborating further. His hands were shaking. Erin and I moved through the house with quiet efficiency. We filled containers with water. I brought the camping supplies up from the basement, the propane stove, the water filter, the first aid kit. Erin inventoried our pantry. Canned goods, rice, pasta, peanut butter. Enough for maybe 2 weeks if we rationed. Owen sensed the shift. Children are barometers. They can't name the pressure, but they feel it. He stopped asking to go outside. He kept Captain close, one hand always on the dog's neck. "Is the sickness coming here?" he asked at dinner. Erin and I exchanged a look across the table. That silent marital negotiation where you decide in a glance who will answer and how much truth to include. "We're being careful," Erin said. "That's why we're staying inside." "Like a snow day?" "Like a snow day, but longer." He seemed to weigh this. "Okay, can I have more mac and cheese?" That night, after Owen was in bed, Erin and I sat at the kitchen table and spoke in low voices. She told me more about what she'd seen at the hospital. The patient who'd bitten the nurse. His name was Gerald something. A 56-year-old man brought in from a transport van marked with state plates. No history, no intake paperwork. His skin had been pale with a bluish undertone. His pupils didn't respond to light. He'd been restrained, and then he hadn't been. Because 3-point restraints weren't designed for someone who didn't feel pain. "The nurse," I said. "The one who was bitten. What happened to her?" Aaron looked at the table. "They moved her to isolation." That was the last I heard. We both understood what that meant. We just couldn't say it yet. Friday, the power went out at 2:17 in the afternoon. I know the exact time because I was staring at the microwave clock when it disappeared. One moment, the soft electric hum of a functioning house. The next, silence so complete it had weight. Owen was in the living room. His show cut to black. He called out, "Dad?" And I heard the first note of real fear in his voice. "It's okay, just a power outage. Happens all the time." But it didn't come back. Not in 10 minutes, not in 30, not in 2 hours. By evening, we were using flashlights and the camping lantern. I'd pulled the hand crank radio from the emergency kit and spent 20 minutes tuning through static before finding a signal. A local AM station broadcasting on what sounded like emergency power. The voice was strained, professional, reading from a script. "Residents are advised to remain indoors. Do not approach individuals exhibiting erratic or aggressive behavior. Do not attempt to render aid to affected persons. Emergency services are operating at reduced capacity." This message will repeat it repeated, again and again. The same words in the same cadence, a loop that offered no new information and no comfort. I stood on the front porch after dark. The street was empty. No cars, no dog walkers, no teenagers cutting through the neighborhood on their bikes. Every house was dark except for the Mullers across the street. They had a generator humming in their garage, and warm light leaked through their curtains. Then I saw it. A figure at the end of the block, standing under the dead street light at the corner of Millbrook and Hawthorne. Not moving, just standing, facing our direction. I couldn't make out features. The darkness was too thick, but the posture was wrong. Shoulders too far forward. Head tilted at an angle that suggested the neck wasn't working correctly. I watched for 30 seconds, maybe a minute. The figure didn't shift, didn't adjust weight from one foot to the other the way a person standing still naturally does. It was statue still in a way that living bodies aren't. I went back inside, locked the door, checked the back door, checked the windows. "What is it?" Aaron asked from the hallway. "Someone's outside, end of the block." "Someone or I don't know." She came to the front window, and we both looked through the gap in the curtains. The figure was gone. We didn't sleep in our bedroom that night. We brought Owen downstairs, made a nest of blankets in the living room, and pushed the couch against the front door. Captain lay at Owen's feet, ears up, occasionally lifting his head toward sounds we couldn't hear. At some point in the deep middle of the night, I heard glass break, not close. A few houses away, maybe the Patel's place or the Johnsons'. A single sharp crack followed by silence. No alarm, no shouting. Just that one violent sound, and then nothing. Erin's hand found mine in the dark. She squeezed once, hard. I squeezed back. Saturday morning came gray and quiet. I moved through the house, checking windows, checking doors, checking sight lines. The street was still empty. The Mueller's generator had stopped. Their curtains were open now, and I could see into their living room. A lamp knocked over, a bookshelf displaced. No movement inside. Owen woke up and asked for breakfast. I made him oatmeal on the propane stove and told him we were camping indoors. He seemed to like this idea. He asked if we could make s'mores later. I said yes, knowing I'd say yes to anything that kept the fear out of his eyes. Kevin called at 10 a.m. His voice was different, clipped. The voice he'd used when he came back from overseas, the one that stripped all excess from language. I'm leaving Dayton now. Roads are bad but passable. I'll be there in 3 hours. What's happening there? A pause. It's in the city. Marcus, it's here. I saw... Another pause. 3 hours. Lock your doors. They're locked. Lock them again. The line went dead. I checked the front door. It was locked. I locked it again anyway. Kevin arrived in just over 4 hours. He came in his black F-150. The truck bed loaded with gear. A duffel bag, 2 plastic bins, a case of water, and something long wrapped in a moving blanket that I didn't ask about yet. He pulled into the driveway, and I opened the garage door manually, watched him drive in, and closed it behind him. When he stepped out of the truck, I barely recognized him. Not physically. He looked the same buzzed hair and broad shoulders. But something behind his eyes had shifted. He'd seen something on the road that had rearranged his understanding of the world. How bad? I asked. He looked at me. I drove past a church outside Springfield. There were people inside. I could see them through the windows. He stopped, started again. They weren't praying, Marcus. He didn't elaborate. I didn't push. Owen came running from the living room. Uncle Kevin! He leaped at my brother, who caught him and lifted him with one arm in a motion so fluid it betrayed nothing of what he'd just told me. Kevin's face transformed. Warm, present. The uncle who brought birthday presents and let Owen ride on his shoulders. Hey, little man, you being brave? We're camping inside. Dad said we can make s'mores. That sounds awesome. I brought supplies. He set Owen down, and Erin appeared in the doorway to the kitchen. She and Kevin shared a look. That quick adult exchange over a child's head where information passes without words. She nodded. He nodded back. Then she said, I'm glad you're here, and meant it with her whole body. We unloaded the truck after Owen went back to his blanket fort with Captain. The bins contained canned food, batteries, a medical kit far more comprehensive than ours, duct tape, zip ties, a hatchet, and 2 hunting knives. The wrapped object was a Remington 870 shotgun with a box of shells. You think we'll need that? I asked, not because I doubted him, but because I needed to hear the answers spoken aloud. I hope not, but hoping doesn't count for much right now. We stored it on the high shelf in the coat closet, out of Owen's reach, out of his sight. That afternoon, Kevin and I walked the perimeter of the property while Erin stayed inside with Owen. The neighborhood was a ghost town. Cars sat in driveways, untouched. A tricycle lay on its side on the Hendersons' lawn. 2 houses down, a front door stood open, swinging slightly in the breeze. No one came or went. How many you think are left? I asked. On this street, maybe half. Some probably left early. Went to family, tried to get out of the city. Others. He looked at the Muller's house, the open curtains, the knocked-over lamp. Others didn't leave. We reinforced the first floor. Kevin had experience with this, not from domestic life, but from forward operating bases. He showed me how to secure the sliding glass door with a cut broomstick, how to angle furniture to create channels instead of barricades, how to designate a fallback point if the first floor was compromised. Upstairs bathroom, he said. Smallest room, One entry point, access to the roof through the attic hatch. I'd lived in this house for 6 years and never thought about it tactically. Now every room was a position. Every window was a vulnerability. My home had become a structure to defend. That evening, we sat around the propane stove eating canned chili. Owen was between Aaron and me, Captain at his feet, Kevin across from us on the floor. The lantern cast long shadows. We could have been a family on a camping trip if you didn't look too closely. If you didn't notice the hatchet leaning against the wall by the door, or the way Kevin's eyes tracked every sound from outside. Owen pointed his spoon at Kevin. "Uncle Kevin, are you staying for a sleepover?" "I'm staying for as long as you need me, buddy." Owen smiled, that gap-toothed, guileless smile. "Good, because Dad said monsters aren't real, but I want you here just in case." The room went quiet. Aaron looked at me. Kevin looked at the floor. I put my arm around my son and said nothing, because every answer I could think of was a lie. Sunday brought the first direct encounter. I was in the kitchen at dawn, filtering water through the camping system, when I heard a sound from the backyard. Not the rustling of an animal or the creak of wind on the fence. A dragging sound, rhythmic but uneven. Something moving along the fence line with purpose, but impaired coordination. I moved to the window above the sink. The yard was gray with early light, the grass heavy with dew. At first, I saw nothing. Then movement by the back gate, the wooden gate that led to the alley behind our row of houses. A woman. Or what had been a woman. She was pressing against the gate, not pushing with intention, but leaning into it with her full weight, her arms at her sides. Her head was tilted back at that wrong angle I'd seen on the figure days before. She wore a housecoat, blue, floral, and one slipper. Her legs moved in small, shuffling steps that drove her body forward into the wood again and again. I recognized the housecoat. Mrs. Grable, 2 houses down and across the alley. 73 years old. She'd given Owen homemade cookies at Halloween. Kevin appeared beside me. He'd heard it too. He watched for 10 seconds, reading the scene with trained eyes. "Infected," he said. It wasn't a question. "It's Mrs. Grable." It was Mrs. Grable. The distinction landed like a stone in my chest. I watched her push against the gate. The latch was holding, but the wood was old. She wasn't strong. Whatever coordination remained in her body was diminished. But she was persistent. The same motion, repeated without fatigue, without frustration, without any sign that she registered the barrier as an obstacle to solve, rather than a surface to press against. "Will the gate hold?" I asked. "For now. She's not applying force with any mechanics, just body weight." He paused. "But if more come, or if she shifts angle and catches the latch, what do we do?" He looked at me steadily. "Nothing. Right now, nothing. She's not inside. She might move on. If we go out there, we risk drawing attention." So we watched. For 40 minutes, Mrs. Grable pressed against our back gate in her blue housecoat and one slipper. Then, as if responding to some signal we couldn't perceive, she turned. Slowly, clumsily, her body rotating in segments rather than all at once, and shuffled back down the alley. The dragging sound faded. I realized I'd been holding my breath. My hands were shaking, not from cold. "Owen doesn't see this," I said. "Agreed." We told Erin. She absorbed it the way she absorbed difficult patient news, with stillness and precision. She asked specific questions. How fast was the movement? Were the eyes tracking? Did she vocalize? Kevin answered each one, and I watched my wife shift into clinical mode, processing threat data instead of grief for a neighbor. The ones at the hospital, she said. They responded to sound. Strongly. Visual tracking was minimal. Their pupils weren't constricting. But noise drew them immediately. So we stay quiet, Kevin said. We stay very quiet. That afternoon, Owen built a fort out of couch cushions and blankets. He whispered to Captain inside it, some elaborate game involving pirates and treasure. The whispered volume wasn't intentional discipline. It was just how he played. But it felt like grace, like the universe had given me a child whose nature might save him. I sat in the hallway outside his fort, my back against the wall, and I thought about Mrs. Grable in her housecoat. I thought about cookies shaped like pumpkins, and her husband who died 3 years ago, and the flower boxes she maintained on her porch with religious precision. I thought about what it meant that she was gone, not dead, not absent, but gone in the way that mattered most. The person erased, the body remaining, continuing, pressing against fences in the dawn light. That was the moment I understood what we were facing. Not a disease you survived or didn't. Not a crisis with a timeline, an erasure, a conversion. The world's population being rewritten, one body at a time. And my son was 7 years old. And I had told him monsters weren't real. Monday brought a knock at the door. A real knock. Human rhythm. 3 raps, a pause, 3 more. Kevin was on his feet instantly, the hatchet in his hand before I'd even processed the sound. Erin moved to Owen, placed herself between him and the front of the house. I went to the window. A man stood on our porch, mid-30s, dark skin, wearing a North Face jacket and carrying a backpack that looked hastily packed. He was looking over his shoulder, scanning the street, his body language broadcasting fear in every direction. "Please," he said, not shouting but urgent. "I can see you in there. Please, I'm not sick. I just need, please." I looked at Kevin. He shook his head, not a refusal, but a warning. Careful. I opened the door 3 inches, the chain still latched. "Who are you?" David Okafor. I live on Millbrook, the apartment's at the end. I've been alone for 2 days. My phone's dead, I don't... His voice cracked. "I don't know where to go." I studied his eyes. Clear, tracking. Pupils responding to the light change as he turned toward me. His hands were empty and shaking. Behind him, the street was still. "He's clean," Kevin said from behind me. A military assessment made in seconds. I unlatched the chain. David came inside and I locked the door behind him. He stood in our foyer trembling, his eyes moving over the reinforced windows and the furniture positioning with a mixture of confusion and relief. Erin brought him water. He drank the entire glass without stopping. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you. I thought everyone was gone." We sat him down in the living room. Owen watched from his cushioned fort with open curiosity, the way children observe new adults, categorizing them without judgment. Captain sniffed David's shoes and apparently approved, settling back down beside Owen. David was a software developer, worked from home, lived alone. He'd stayed in his apartment through the first days, watching everything unfold on his laptop until the internet died with the power. Then he'd been in the dark, rationing granola bars and tap water, listening to sounds in the hallway that he couldn't bring himself to investigate. "My neighbor," he said, "across the hall. I could hear her Thursday night, walking back and forth for hours. Then she stopped walking and started..." He searched for the word. "Scratching at my door, just scratching, for a whole day." "Did she get in?" Kevin asked. "No, deadbolt held, but I couldn't stay. The sound, I couldn't..." He pressed his palms against his eyes. I waited until it stopped, and then I ran. His story filled in gaps. The apartment complex had been hit hard. Close quarters, shared hallways, thin doors. He estimated half the residents had turned within the first 72 hours. The rest had fled or were hiding as he'd been. He'd seen a few other survivors on the street during his walk to our neighborhood, but they'd moved past each other without stopping. Too afraid to trust, too exposed to linger. "You can stay," I said, and felt Kevin's gaze on me. Not disagreement, assessment. Kevin was calculating resource allocation. Another person meant another mouth, but also another set of hands, another pair of eyes on watch. "I can help," David said, reading the dynamic. I'm not useless. I can keep watch. I can do whatever you need." Aaron handed him a plate of crackers and peanut butter. He ate slowly, deliberately, as if reminding his body how to receive nourishment. Owen emerged from his fort and stood in front of David with the directness only children possess. "I'm Owen. That's Captain. Are you hiding from the sick people too?" David looked at me, then back at Owen. "Yeah, buddy, I am. It's okay. My dad and Uncle Kevin are keeping us safe." David nodded. "I can see that." Owen returned to his fort, satisfied. And just like that, our household of 4 became 5, plus one dog who had no idea the world was ending, but remained, as always, faithfully present. The days developed a rhythm despite the chaos outside. Kevin established watch rotations, 4-hour shifts, 2 people awake at all times. David took to it immediately, grateful for purpose, relieved to have structure in a world that had lost all familiar form. Aaron managed our supplies with the precision of someone accustomed to hospital inventory. I managed Owen, his questions, his fears, his need for normalcy in an environment that could provide less of it each day. By Wednesday of the second week, we'd heard gunshots 3 times. Twice from the south, once from somewhere close, maybe 2 streets over. Each time, Owen flinched and looked at me. Each time, I said the same thing. "Someone's being safe. That's a good sound." I don't know if he believed me. I don't know if I believed myself. The infected population in our neighborhood had grown. We could track it through sound and observation, careful peeks from upstairs windows during daylight. They moved individually, mostly. Slow, directionless wandering punctuated by sudden orienting responses when sound reached them. I counted 7 distinct figures over 2 days. Some I recognized. Tom Henderson from the end of the block, still wearing his OSU sweatshirt. A teenage girl I'd seen at the bus stop. A man in a pizza delivery uniform who'd probably been mid-shift when it happened. Kevin kept a mental map. "They're drifting east," he said during a quiet moment on Wednesday night. "Following something. The highway maybe, a sound source." "Does that mean they'll leave?" "Some might, but more will drift in from other directions. It's not a migration. It's Brownian motion, random unless stimulated." David had been observing their behavior from the second-floor window with a kind of focused intensity I recognized from my own engineering mindset. Pattern recognition, system analysis. "They don't interact with each other," he noted. 2 of them crossed paths in the Muller's yard this morning, walked right past each other. No acknowledgement, no pack behavior. "That's something," Aaron said. "Means they don't coordinate." "Yet," Kevin added. That word, yet, landed in the room and stayed. Owen had adapted in ways that both impressed and broke me. He whispered by default now. He moved through the house with careful steps, avoiding the floorboards he'd learned were creaky. He accepted the rules: no going near windows, no loud sounds, no going outside, without argument. But at night, when we lay in our blanket nest in the living room. He pressed against my side with a force that told me everything his daytime composure concealed. "Dad," he whispered one night, his mouth close to my ear, "when will the sick people get better?" I stroked his hair. "The doctors are working on it." "Are there still doctors?" The question gutted me. 7 years old, and already understanding that infrastructure could fail, that the systems adults relied on weren't permanent. "Yes," I said. "There are always doctors. They're figuring it out." He was quiet for a while. Then, "I miss school." "I know, buddy. I miss Aiden and Ms. Park." "I know." "Do you think they're okay?" I held him closer. "I think so. I think lots of people are safe, just like us." He fell asleep against my ribs. I stared at the ceiling, where the camping lantern cast its pale circle, and I calculated. 14 days of food remaining at current consumption, water manageable with the filter and the bathtub reserves, propane for maybe another week of cooking. After that, decisions, hard ones. Kevin was awake across the room. I could tell by his breathing. After Owen's breaths deepened, my brother spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "We need to think about moving." "Where?" "I don't know yet. But staying static, eventually the numbers outside, will make this position untenable." "This is our home." "I know." The word home felt strange in my mouth. What made a home? Walls? Memories? Safety? If the safety was eroding, was it still home? Or was it just a building we were emotionally attached to while it slowly became a trap? I didn't answer him. I held my son and listened to the night, counting the seconds between sounds I couldn't identify. Thursday brought the first real test of our cohesion. The water filter stopped working. The ceramic element had cracked, dropped by accident when David was cleaning it. His hands still unsteady from chronic low-level panic. He stood in the kitchen, holding the two pieces, his face a mask of horror that had nothing to do with the broken object, and everything to do with what it represented. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice tight. "I'm so sorry. I'll fix it, It's not fixable," Kevin said. Not cruel, but blunt. He assessed the pieces and set them on the counter. "We have the bathtub reserves. Boiling works. We'll switch to boiling." "But the propane." We all did the math simultaneously. Boiling water would eat through our cooking fuel twice as fast. Every calculation shifted, every timeline compressed. David couldn't let it go. He apologized the 3 more times that day. The 4th time, Kevin stopped him with a hand on his shoulder. "It happened. We adapt. Stop apologizing and start figuring out solutions." David nodded, swallowed his guilt, and spent the next 2 hours inventorying every liquid in the house. Juice boxes from Owen's school lunches, a case of sparkling water in the basement, 2 liters of flat soda, the fluid from canned fruits. It was useful work. I watched him pour himself into it, and I recognized the mechanism. Guilt transmuted into service. I'd seen it in myself often enough. That afternoon, we heard something new. Not the shuffling of individual infected, a group sound. Multiple bodies moving in the same direction, drawn by something we couldn't perceive. Kevin and I crept to the upstairs guest room, the window that faced north, and looked out. 11 of them, moving down the center of the street in a loose cluster, not coordinated, David's observation held, but responding to the same stimulus. Something to the north was pulling them. A sound maybe, too low or distant for us to register, but within whatever frequency their altered neurology now tracked. They passed our house without pausing. without turning. 11 figures in various states of decay and disarray, some barefoot, some still in work clothes, one in hospital scrubs that made Aaron turn away when I described it later. They moved and they passed, and the street was empty again, and we exhaled. "That's new," Kevin said. "Same stimulus response, but grouped." "Does it change things?" "It means density is increasing. They're accumulating in this area. Whether they pass through or stay depends on what's drawing them." That night, Aaron and I had our first real argument since the outbreak. It was whispered, fierce, conducted in the bathroom, with the door closed and the fan off. The only private space left. "We need to leave," she said. "And go where?" "The roads?" Kevin said the roads. Kevin's been here a week and hasn't offered a destination. He's fortifying a position, but has no exit strategy. I need to know there's a plan, Marcus. There is a plan. We're safe here. We're together. For how long? The food, the water. Owen. Her voice caught. Owen can't live like this. Whispering, hiding. He's 7. I know how old my son is. That was harsh. I heard it leave my mouth and wanted to pull it back. Erin's eyes went flat. That expression she wore when I'd wounded her, and she was deciding whether to escalate or withdraw. She withdrew. "Figure it out," she said. "You and Kevin, figure out where we're going and when, because I won't watch him waste away in this house." She left the bathroom. I stood in the dark, my hands on the sink edge, looking at a mirror I couldn't see my reflection in because there was no power and no light, and I was invisible even to myself. She was right. I knew she was right. Staying was comfortable. Staying was familiar. But familiarity wasn't safety. It was just the feeling of safety. And those two things were diverging further with each passing day. I found Kevin in the garage, cleaning the shotgun by lantern light. "We need an exit strategy," I said. He didn't look up. "I know. I've been thinking about the reservoir." The Hoover Reservoir was 12 miles north. Kevin had been there fishing years ago and remembered the geography. Elevated terrain, sight lines, limited access roads, a ranger station with solid construction. More importantly, it was away from population density. The infected clustered where people had been. The reservoir was surrounded by parkland and sparse residential. Fewer people meant fewer infected. 12 miles, I said. "That's on foot with Owen. We drive. My truck's full. We load essential supplies, move at first light, take Route 3 north and cut west at the reservoir access road. And if the road's blocked, then we find another route. But we go." We spent Friday planning. Kevin drew the route from memory, marking potential choke points. David offered his knowledge of the area. He'd run trails near the reservoir before everything, knew the secondary roads. Aaron assembled go bags for each of us: water, food, first aid, warm layers. She made one for Owen that was light enough for him to carry, but contained enough to sustain him for 2 days if he somehow got separated. That thought, if he somehow got separated, sat in my stomach like acid. I watched her pack a juice box and granola bars into his little backpack alongside a folded photograph of our family and a note with his name, our names, and blood type. She was preparing for outcomes I couldn't face. "He won't need that," I said. She looked at me. "I hope not. But I'll sleep better knowing it's there." I couldn't argue. She was right again. She'd been right more consistently than me throughout this entire collapse. Her training, triage, preparation, acceptance of worst-case scenarios made her more functional in crisis than my engineer's desire for control and prediction. We decided on Sunday morning. 2 days to prepare. 2 days to observe patterns, confirm the route, rest. Saturday was quiet. The infected traffic on our street had slowed. Whatever drew the group north seemed to be pulling the local population in that direction, which ironically meant our departure route would move against their grain. Kevin noted this as advantageous. Owen spent Saturday building an elaborate drawing at the coffee table. He'd been drawing more since the outbreak, his outlet, his processing tool. This one was a house, our house, I realized, with a big sun and green grass and all of us standing in front of it, including David, who he'd drawn taller than Kevin despite being shorter, including Captain, proportioned roughly the size of a horse. Everyone smiling, everyone safe. He presented it to me with ceremony. This is us after the sick people are gone. I took the drawing and I looked at it and I felt something in my chest crack along a fault line I hadn't known existed. It's perfect, buddy. You can hang it on the fridge. I did, with the magnet from the Columbus Zoo that we'd gotten last summer. There it stayed, a vision of normalcy rendered in crayon, pinned to an appliance that no longer functioned, in a house we were about to leave forever. Saturday night, I sat with Owen in his blanket fort and told him we were going on an adventure. A car trip to a special place with trees and water. He'd need to be very quiet in the car and do exactly what we said, and it would be like a game. Will Captain come? Of course. And David? Everyone comes. Nobody gets left behind. He thought about this. What about Mrs. Grable? Should we tell her? My throat closed. Mrs. Grable already left, buddy. She went to stay with her daughter. He accepted this. Why wouldn't he? Adults told him things, and he built his world from those things. Every lie I told him was a brick in a structure that would eventually have to be rebuilt from truth. But not yet. Not while he was 7 and the world was full of teeth. When do we go? Tomorrow morning, early, before the sun comes up. Like a secret mission? Exactly like a secret mission. He grinned, that gap-toothed grin. And for one moment, in the lantern light, inside a fort made of cushions, the world was small enough to protect. We left at 5:15 a.m. on Sunday morning. The truck was packed the night before. Kevin had arranged everything with military precision. Supplies in the bed, secured under a tarp. Go bags in the cab. Aaron and Owen in the back seat, Captain between them. David beside me in the front. Kevin driving. The garage door was the loudest thing. We disconnected the automatic opener days ago, so it had to be lifted manually. A grinding, metallic protest that sounded like a scream in the pre-dawn silence. I winced with every inch. Kevin had the engine running at idle, the headlights off. When the door was high enough, he rolled forward onto the driveway, and I pulled the door back down behind us. The neighborhood was still. I scanned the visible street, empty. No figures, no movement. The world was gray and held breath quiet, as if the infrastructure itself was waiting. I climbed into the cab, and Kevin pulled out slowly, tires whispering on the asphalt. No headlights. He navigated by the faint pre-dawn ambient light and memory. Left on Millbrook, right on State Route 3, north. For the first mile, nothing. Empty road. Cars parked on shoulders, some with doors open, some with windows broken, all unoccupied. We passed a gas station with its lights dead and its convenience store doors shattered inward. We passed a school where the marquee still read, Fall Festival, October 28th. We passed through the geography of our former normal, and watched it scroll by like a museum exhibit of a civilization that had functioned 3 weeks ago and now existed only as artifact. Then, at the edge of a residential stretch where Route 3 widened to 4 lanes, we saw them. A group. Larger than the 11 I'd counted before. 20, maybe 25, scattered across the road and the adjacent parking lot of a strip mall. Some standing, some shuffling in tight circles, a few on the ground, not moving, but not dead. Just still in that terrible way that suggested dormancy rather than rest. Kevin slowed the truck to a crawl. Owen pressed against Erin in the back seat, his face turned into her shoulder. Captain whimpered once, a small questioning sound, and Erin put her hand over his muzzle, gentle but firm. "Left lane," David whispered. "There's a gap between the ones near the median and the cluster by the pharmacy." Kevin adjusted course, easing the truck to the left. The tires made almost no sound at this speed. We crept. Inches per second, it felt like. The infected figures were 30 feet away, then 20, then 10. One of them turned its head. A man, young, maybe early 20s, in athletic clothes. His head rotated toward us with that segmented, mechanical motion. Not tracking the truck visually, his eyes were milky, unfocused, but orienting toward the sound. Toward the low rumble of the engine. Kevin's hand moved to the gear shift, ready to accelerate if needed. My hand found the door handle, though I didn't know what I'd do if I opened it. The young man in athletic clothes took one step toward us, then another. Then Captain barked. One bark, sharp, involuntary, a response to the proximity of threat that no training could override. And it was enough. Every head turned. Every figure in that parking lot, on that road, oriented toward the truck simultaneously, not coordinated, David's early observation held, but responding to the same stimulus. 25 bodies, all alerted, all beginning to move. "Go," I said. Kevin didn't need the instruction. The truck surged forward, headlights still off, engine roaring now because stealth no longer mattered. We blew through the gap David had identified as it was closing, bodies converging from both sides, and I felt rather than heard a thump against the rear quarter panel. Something striking the truck bed. A hand, an arm. Contact that failed to find purchase. Owen was crying. Silent tears. He'd learned not to make sound, even in terror. And that adaptation was the saddest thing I'd ever witnessed. "It's okay," Erin murmured into his hair. "We're through. We're past them. It's okay." Kevin accelerated to 60. The cluster disappeared behind us. Ahead, the road was clear. 6 miles north, we hit the first barricade. Not infected, human. Someone had dragged vehicles across the road in a deliberate blockade. 2 pickup trucks and an SUV, angled to create a barrier with no gap wide enough for a vehicle. Kevin stopped the truck 50 yards back. "What is this?" David asked. "Survivors," Kevin said. He scanned the tree line on either side of the road. Territorial, probably armed. A figure appeared from behind the SUV. Male, stocky, wearing a hunting vest and carrying a rifle held low but visible. He approached halfway, then stopped and raised a hand, palm out. "Stop." Kevin rolled down his window. "We're passing through, headed to the reservoir." "Nobody passes through," the man called back. His voice was flat, rehearsed. He'd said this before. "Roads closed. Turn around." "There's 5 of us. A child. We're not a threat." "Everyone's a threat. Turn around." Another figure appeared behind the first, a woman with a shotgun, positioned to cover angles. This wasn't improvised. These people had been here for days. had established protocols, had decided that the way to survive was to shrink the world to a defensible perimeter and deny entry to everyone outside it. I understood the logic. I hated it, but I understood it. Kevin shifted into reverse slowly, showing compliance. "Alternative route?" he asked me. I pulled up the mental map. Sunbury Road, cuts east then north, adds 4 miles but avoids this stretch entirely. "David?" "I know Sunbury. It's residential for the first 2 miles, then farmland. Should be clearer." Kevin backed the truck up, turned, and we detoured. The encounter had taken less than 2 minutes, but it reshaped my understanding of what lay ahead. It wasn't just infected out there. It was people. People making decisions from fear, drawing lines, defending territory. People who would point a rifle at a truck carrying a child because the calculus of crisis had reduced everyone outside their circle to a potential threat. Owen had stopped crying. He sat up between Aaron and Captain, his face blotchy but composed. "Were those bad guys?" he asked. "No, buddy. They were scared. Scared people sometimes aren't friendly. Like when Tyler pushed me at recess because he was scared of the dodgeball." "Yes, exactly like that." He nodded, filing this away into his 7-year-old framework for understanding the world. Fear makes people unfriendly. It was a simplification, but it wasn't wrong. Sunbury Road was clear, as David predicted. Residential gave way to farmland, flat stretches of harvested cornfields and empty pasture. We passed farmhouses, some dark, some showing signs of habitation. At one, a man stood on his porch with a shotgun and watched us pass without raising it. At another, curtains moved. Eyes tracked us, but no one intervened. The rural strategy seemed to be observation without engagement, a live-and-let-pass approach born of distance rather than density. We made the turn onto the reservoir access road just as the sun cleared the horizon. Orange light flooded the cab. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt something other than dread. Not hope, not yet, but possibility. The sensation that movement meant something, that choosing to leave rather than waiting to be overrun was its own form of agency. The access road wound through state parkland. Dense trees on both sides, the road narrowing to 1 lane. Kevin slowed again, this time out of navigation caution rather than stealth. The trees blocked sight lines. Anything could be in these woods. "How far to the ranger station?" David asked. 2 miles up this road. It'll be on the left, near the east shore." Aaron leaned forward between the seats. "Owen needs to eat, and Captain needs to get out." 10 minutes, Kevin said. "Let's get to the station first, then we assess." Owen was quiet. He held Captain's collar with one hand and pressed his other palm flat against the window, watching the trees scroll past. I wondered what he saw. I wondered if the forest looked like adventure or danger through his eyes. I wondered how long before those two things became permanently fused in his mind. The ranger station was intact, a single-story structure of dark wood and stone, built in the 1970s CCC style. Solid, functional, unlovely. It sat in a clearing 50 yards from the shoreline, surrounded by gravel parking and a split-rail fence. The windows were unbroken. The door was closed. A wooden sign reading Hoover Reservoir Park Services hung beside the entrance. One chain rusted through, the sign tilted at an angle. Kevin parked the truck close to the entrance, and we sat in silence for a full minute, listening. Wind in the trees, water lapping the shore, a bird somewhere. The first bird song I'd consciously registered in weeks. Nothing else. "I'll clear it," Kevin said. He took the shotgun from behind his seat and stepped out. David followed with the hatchet. Aaron and I stayed with Owen, doors locked, engine running. They moved around the building's perimeter first, checking windows, checking the back. Kevin tried the front door, locked. He moved to a window, used the hatchet handle to pop the latch, and climbed through. 2 minutes of silence that felt like 20. Then the front door opened from inside, and Kevin stood in the doorway, weapon lowered. Clear, nobody's been here. We unloaded. The station had a main room with a service counter and display cases of geological samples and trail maps. 2 offices in the back. A bathroom with a manual pump well. Kevin worked the handle and brown water sputtered, then cleared. Potable, or close enough to boil. A storage closet with maintenance supplies. A small kitchen with a propane hookup. The canister was half full. Owen walked through the space with wide eyes. After 2 weeks in our living room, any new environment was vast. He found a display of animal tracks, a mounted board showing plaster casts of deer, fox, and raccoon prints, and stood before it with the fascination of a museum visitor. "Can we stay here?" he asked. "It's cool." "For a while," I said. "What do you think, Captain? Good enough?" The dog was already investigating corners with his nose, tail wagging at unfamiliar scents. His approval was immediate. We established the station over the next several hours. Kevin secured the windows with boards from the maintenance closet. David and I unloaded the truck and organized supplies in the back office. Aaron set up a sleeping area in the main room, away from windows, central, warm. Owen helped by arranging his drawings along the service counter, transforming the institutional space into something that held a trace of home. By afternoon, we had a functional base. Water from the well, cooking from the propane, sight lines from the elevated position. The nearest residential area was 3 miles south. The road we'd come in on was the only vehicle access, making approach predictable. The reservoir itself provided a natural barrier on one side. "It's defensible," Kevin said, satisfaction evident for the first time since his arrival at our house in Westerville. David stood by the window facing the water. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. And it was. The reservoir stretched gray and silver under the overcast sky, its surface undisturbed. Trees lined the far shore in autumn color. Reds and golds that hadn't cared about the collapse of civilization. The world was still turning. Nature hadn't noticed our apocalypse. That first night at the station, we ate canned soup heated on the kitchen stove. Owen sat on the counter, his legs swinging, telling Captain about the animal tracks. David and Kevin discussed watch schedules. Erin leaned against my shoulder, her eyes closed, her breathing even. "You were right," I told her, about leaving. "I know," she said, without opening her eyes, and smiled. It felt, for one evening, like we might be okay. Like we'd made the right choice at the right time and found a place where the arithmetic of survival balanced. I knew this feeling was fragile. I knew the world outside this station hadn't changed. But I let myself have it. One night of something adjacent to peace. Because I didn't know when I'd feel it again. I was right not to know. Because peace, in this new world, was always borrowed time. The reservoir bought us 11 days. 11 days of relative stability, of routine, of rest, of Owen regaining some portion of his childhood. He explored within our established perimeter. He threw rocks into the water with David, who taught him to skip stones. He drew increasingly elaborate pictures that now included the ranger station, the trees, the reservoir's shoreline. Kevin taught him basic knots. Aaron quizzed him on spelling words, maintaining the ghost of education against the void. I watched my son adjust, and I felt the particular grief of a parent who recognizes resilience in their child and knows it shouldn't have been required this soon. On day 9, Kevin found tracks near the access road. Not infected, too purposeful, too evenly spaced. Human. Someone had walked up the road, stopped approximately 200 yards from the station, and turned back. Boot prints in the soft earth. Scouts, Kevin said. Someone from that barricade group, maybe, or someone new. Threat? Unknown. But they know we're here now. We doubled watch. Kevin took longer shifts. David wired cans with pebbles along the tree line, crude but effective alert system. I reinforced the window boards. Every action, a small prayer against probability. Day 11 brought the visitors. Not scouts this time. 3 people walked up the access road in broad daylight. 2 men and a woman, all armed. Rifles and a pistol visible. They walked in the center of the road, making no effort at concealment. Their hands were raised in the universal gesture of parley. Kevin met them at the perimeter of our gravel lot, shotgun visible but pointed at the ground. I stood behind him. David watched from the station window. The lead man was tall, weathered, maybe 50. He introduced himself as Carl. The others were his daughter Megan, late 20s, steady eyes, and a man named Jess who didn't speak and didn't need to because his size spoke for him. "We're from a group south of here," Carl said. 30 people. We've been watching this road for a few days. Saw you come in. Wanted to introduce ourselves. "You're the barricade," Kevin said. Carl nodded. "That's our outer perimeter, yeah. Sorry about the reception. We've had trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that walks. The kind that doesn't anymore." He glanced toward the station. "You've got a kid in there." It wasn't a question. They'd been watching. They knew our composition. "We're not asking you to leave," Carl continued. "This is parkland. Nobody owns it. But I wanted to make contact, see what kind of people you are. See if maybe there's a conversation to be had about mutual benefit." Kevin's posture didn't soften. "What kind of mutual benefit?" "Trade, information, maybe consolidation eventually. Winter's coming. 30 people survive better than 5. 5 survive better than 2. Math's pretty clear." I stepped forward. "We appreciate the contact. We're not looking for trouble." Carl looked at me, then at Kevin, reading us the way we were reading him, cataloging threat level, assessing sincerity. He nodded. "We'll come back in a few days. Think about it. We're at the old feed store on Route 36 if you want to make contact first." He reached into his jacket pocket slowly, deliberate, showing his hand, and produced a folded paper, a hand-drawn map. Kevin took it. "We'll think about it." Carl nodded, signaled his group, and they withdrew the way they'd come. We watched until they disappeared around the bend in the access road. Back inside, we debated. Kevin was wary. Years of experience had taught him that groups with resources attracted those who'd take them. David argued for connection. Safety in numbers, the practical logic Carl had outlined. Erin was measured. She wanted to meet them, assess their medical capabilities, see if they had children. "Owen needs other kids," she said. "He needs normalcy more than security." "He needs both," I said. "Then find him both. That's what parents do." The map sat on the counter next to Owen's drawings. 2 visions of the future, rendered in different hands. One crayon bright and hopeful. One pencil gray and practical. Both asking the same question. What comes next? On day 14, the decision was made for us. A horde, the word crystallized in my vocabulary that morning, dropping out of fiction into lived reality, emerged from the south along the access road. Not 20, not 50, hundreds. A wave of bodies, drawn by something, sound, scent, the inexplicable migration impulse Kevin had warned about, moving through the parkland toward the reservoir. David spotted them first on morning watch. His voice came steady but fast. "Marcus, Kevin, you need to see this." From the station window, the access road was visible for about a quarter-mile before it curved into trees. The road was full, wall to wall, bodies shuffling in that same directionless but unified current, like a river finding its channel. They weren't heading for us specifically. Their trajectory would take them past the station, toward the water. But past the station meant within 50 feet of our walls. Hundreds of infected, 50 feet away, with only wooden boards and silence protecting us. "We can't fight that," Kevin said. Not with fear, with the cold clarity of someone who'd learned to accept the mathematics of overwhelming force. "We go. Now." The next 10 minutes were controlled chaos. We'd prepared for this. Go bags ready, truck loaded with permanent essentials, evacuation rehearsed in whispered conversations after Owen slept. But rehearsal is theory. Execution is a 7-year-old who doesn't understand why we're leaving the place that just started to feel safe. "Owen, buddy, we have to go. Right now. Secret mission." His eyes went wide, not with excitement this time. He could see it in our faces. He could feel the quality of our urgency, different from practice, heavier, real. "The sick people?" he whispered. "Yes, lots of them. We're going somewhere safer." He grabbed his backpack. He grabbed one drawing, the one of our family in front of the house. He looked at the others, his gallery on the counter, and I could see him calculating what he could carry. Then he turned and walked to the truck. 7 years old, making triage decisions about what mattered enough to save. We were in the truck in 7 minutes. Kevin fired the engine, noise be damned now, and we pulled out of the gravel lot just as the first figures emerged from the tree line at the curve. Their heads turned. The sound registered. But we were moving, and they couldn't match a vehicle's speed. Kevin took us north, away from the horde, deeper into parkland. Unpaved roads, maintenance tracks, routes that weren't on any map David knew. The truck bucked over ruts and roots. Owen braced himself between Aaron and Captain, his drawing clutched to his chest. We drove for 40 minutes before Kevin was satisfied with the distance. He stopped on a fire access road overlooking a valley. High ground, visible approaches, temporary but secure enough for a decision. "Carl's group," I said. Kevin looked at me, then at the map, still in the glove box. He unfolded it, traced the route with his finger. "Route 36, the feed store, 8 miles west." "Do we trust them? Do we have a choice?" That was the axis on which everything turned. Not trust, necessity. Not belief in human goodness, acceptance that isolation had limits. 5 people and a dog could not survive what we'd just witnessed. The arithmetic Carl had described, 30 survive better than 5, was no longer theoretical. It was the demonstrated truth of this morning. Erin reached from the back seat and put her hand on my shoulder. "We go." David nodded. Kevin folded the map and put the truck in gear. We turned west, toward strangers, toward the unknown, toward the possibility that community was still possible in a world that had been reduced to teeth and silence and running. Owen's voice came from the back seat, small but clear. "Dad, are we going to be okay?" I turned to look at him. My son, his dark curls, his gap tooth. his drawing pressed against his heart, his eyes asking me for the truth this time. Not the comfortable version, not the nightlight version, but the real answer. "We're going to try, buddy. That's what we do. We keep trying." He nodded, and I thought, that's not a lie. That one I can stand behind. We reached Carl's group by noon that day. They were real, imperfect, fractured, frightened, but real. 33 people in a converted feed store with generators and rain barrels and children Owen's age who didn't yet know the word horde. Aaron found their medic and got to work within an hour. Kevin assessed their defenses and started improvements by sundown. David found their tech salvage team and discovered purpose. And Owen found a girl named Lily who also had a gap-toothed smile. And they drew pictures together on the concrete floor while Captain lay between them like a furry mediator. That first night, in a sleeping bag on a warehouse floor surrounded by strangers who were becoming neighbors, Owen whispered to me, "Dad, I know you said monsters aren't real. I remember. I think maybe you were wrong. But I think maybe people are stronger than monsters. Is that right?" I pulled him close. This boy who'd learned the shape of the world in 3 weeks, who'd carried his family portrait through an evacuation, who still asked questions because he still believed in answers. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "I think that's exactly right."